think this is recording. So right now, you guys take out your bills, turn to 4.1, and we're just going to kind of cover the basics here of cell communication, because that's what 4.1 in your bill is basically about. And so keep in mind that we're made up of anywhere between 8 to 13 trillion cells, and most of them have to work together to keep us growing, alive, homeostasis going. And so they have to communicate, and there has to be ways for them to communicate. You can think of it like the internet, because we can send messages from the internet from one to another. We're communicating now through the internet, through this video. And so, you think about that. The cell is able to contact other cells, well, depending on their distance, right? They can even do internal, send internal messages that we're going to talk about here in a second. Okay, so they send out things called hormones and neurotransmitters, and this kind of discussions from the time that we're born until the time we die. This is going on. So there's crazy amounts of messages that are being sent even right now as we're sitting. Okay? Now, they had to communicate, like we said, because they had to respond to the environment. So if it gets cold, the body's got to know to release something, a hormone called pyrogen, to help heat us up. Okay? So, and then it has to send that message to wherever the pyrogen is released. They need to coordinate activities. What kind of activities? Well, like movement. You have all these muscle cells and nerve cells that are connected. And so it's a really complicated process of moving just your hands. A lot of things have to be in sync. If we cut ourselves, break a bone, we have to heal. Okay, so that's an activity that has to be coordinated. If, like, I cut myself, when does the body know that we're healed? There's a certain mechanism, and that's how it coordinates that particular activity. And one I'm going to mention at the end, how do we know when we're done growing? So from the time we're born, we start growing. But girls reach the age of probably 18, 19, they stop growing. Boys generally 21, 22, 23, but they stop. And so how do they know how fast to grow? So this activity is all coordinated by cells constantly talking to each other. Okay? Now, cell signals has to be converted. Okay, so we'll go into a target cell. So like my voice right now, my image is being recorded into my phone, but when I put it on YouTube, it's got to be converted into the target video that you can watch. Okay, think of cell signals or cell signaling, where the external signals have to be converted inside the cell to respond. Okay, we're going to get into that. That's probably like in 4.2, 4.3, and then think about it. And this is kind of a big thing. I'd be writing this big time in my bill. Things that you need to communicate. If you're a cell, you need a signaling cell. You need one to tell it, and then you need a signaling molecule. So the signaling cell will create a signaling molecule, and then if it's talking to another cell, it's going to need a receptor cell that receives the signaling molecule. And then once that cell receives the signal, it's got to respond. Could also, I've heard it called a target cell. So you don't know on AP test, they might say a target cell, but they could say responding cell, so just keep that in mind. Now, distance in cells. Okay, really important. You've completed your POGL. So there's they gave the type of signaling categorized by distance, right? So like if I have a cell that makes a mistake during its replication, and it's not right, and it goes through what's called a cell checkpoint. If it's not correct, or something's wrong with the DNA that it didn't create or didn't copy it right, that cell will send an internal signal to self-destruct, and it's called apoptosis. And so that's called an autocrine signal. I don't think you're going to need to know that when on the AP exam. I'm going to give you the three that you're going to need. But autocrine is just within the cell. The next one is called juxtacrine. So like if you're looking at two different opinions, you're putting opinions side by side. So juxtapose means you're looking at things side by side. Juxtacrine means that the cells are either touching or really, really close. Okay, so when the cells are kind of next to each other, that's where we get the juxtacrine. Now, something you probably need to be familiar with. Okay, so plants, plant cells, when they're close together, they have channels called plasmodesmata. Okay, and so this cell, if it's a plant cell, can talk to this cell, and it's a channel. It can send in chemicals, or maybe water even go through here and things of that nature, but it's mainly for signaling. Animals don't have plasmodesmata. We have things called tight junctions, which is what they look like. These are just more or less of just a watertight seal between the cells, and then we have things called gap junctions that are channels. This is our version of the plasmodesmata that allows certain things in and certain things out. You might want to think of this as kind of like if you've ever welded, that's kind of like a spot weld. So this will actually hold the cell together. This is just more or less a tight channel. So when the cells are next to each other and they send signals, juxtacrine, this is what the plant or the animal has to deal with at the cellular level to be able to talk to the next one. Okay, here's an example. So in the upper right, you're going to see what's called an antigen presenting complex. Okay, so like right now, COVID is out in the world, and let's just say Mr. Dobson gets COVID. I may have already had it. I don't know. Some of you have it, so your bodies are doing this right now. So you have a white blood cell that's found a COVID virus. What it does is it engulfs it, breaks it up into little pieces, and it presents it. And there's got to be an actual physical touch here. It presents it to your T cell. So this is a white blood cell that once it gets that piece of that virus, it figures out, oh, okay, this is how you beat it. And it's able to come up with the antibody that will tag the coronavirus for destruction. And so once it touches, this thing figures out what it takes to beat it, and then it will search out a B cell, which is another white blood cell, and they will come together, and this one will relay the message, hey, this is what you need to build. So the B cell will actually build the antibody that the T cell tells it to build. And so these things have to touch, these have to touch. That's juxtacrine. Think of it as a post-it note. The antigen presenting compound is given a post-it note to the T cell. The T cell's reading the message, it's converting it, and it's giving a post-it note to the B cell to tell it what antibody to make. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Okay, now the next one is a short distance. So maybe not right next to each other, but definitely not super close. Okay, so think of remember, it's all about the distance here. Short distance. Now I'm going to give you an example of a nerve impulse. I'm not going to go through and explain a nerve impulse, but if I need to move like my mouth when I talk, that's kind of a short distance from my brain to my mouth. But I can also, from my brain down to my arm, we have nerve cells that we think are like 3 to 4 feet long, so they're really long. So this is kind of a long distance to travel. But what they're talking about in this case, or what I'm talking about, is this little gap right here. So they're not right next to each other, but they're not quite so far away. This, for cell-wise, this is kind of a big distance. And so that's called a synapse. That's the gap between neurons. So a message will come in here, and it's shot down to the nerve impulse, and then that nerve impulse is changed to chemical signals that jump that synapse there, that gap there, and then it keeps going. So this could be, hey, take your hand off the hot stove, and it travels really, really quickly, as fast as electricity can travel, and it helps you to save yourself in this case. And here's a closer look. This is the synapse, and this is that type of paracrine. What did I say that was? Yeah, paracrine. And so this is an example of your paracrine signaling. And what you're seeing here, these chemicals are neurotransmitters. Well, we have hormones and we have neurotransmitters, and basically in our body. And so this just sends a message. Okay. Now, if you've ever been hurt, you notice the pain stops after a while. Now, not only, we have a way to block that, and after a while, our body will start to produce endorphins that kind of block this right here. And so the pain, the signal from pain can't move into the one dendrite, so it will deaden the pain. That's another paracrine signaling. Now long distance, endocrine. Look at the distance. Cells talking to cells a long way away. Long ways away. Now these, where the shorter distances, if you notice, cells may talk to cells that are just like them. Okay, but in long distance, it's not necessarily the case. The thing I'm going to use is like growth hormone. Growth hormone starts in the pituitary gland right in the middle of our brain, and it has to talk to the bones and the muscles and get them. So it's a totally different type of cell. And you can see the distance here is great because that's endocrine. Now I want to show you this, and think about it. I got Facebook here, but now it's kind of old. Now it's Twitter or Snapchat, and you can talk to anybody in the world instantly, somebody different than you. And so that's why I put that Facebook there, to kind of drive home that problem. Now here are some famous people by height. I think I am right about with President Obama. I'm about his height. And so you can see all these famous people. Oh yeah, look here. Here's the Biebs. I don't know how you spell it, but that's the Biebs. Okay, so you can see him. Ariana Grande, I recognize. Eminem, I think. Hunger Games. I don't know who she is. She's ugly. Know him. There's Arnold. But you can see, look at this. Look how these people, tall these guys get. The Rock, he's huge. Middle linebacker, played for somewhere in Florida college. Andre the Giant. I can't remember this pro basketball player. This is currently the tallest man on the planet. And he's from the Middle East somewhere. And then the world's tallest guy is Robert Wadlow. You see him there. Look at this. This guy is nearly 9 feet tall. We're not made to get that tall, so something really wild had to happen. Okay, here's a picture of him here. He died a young man. Check out this picture of him at 12 years old. Look at that, 7 feet tall, and he weighed 240 pounds. So he's already 7 feet tall. And in that picture, I thought he looked like Benedict Cumberbatch, so I put a picture of Benedict Cumberbatch. If you guys know who that is, I put a picture of him there. But can you imagine being 7 feet tall in the 6th grade, 7th grade? That would be insane. Now what he had is, they figured out after he passed away that he had a tumor, a cancerous tumor pressing on his pituitary gland, and it wouldn't shut off. And so eventually he would have been so big, he probably would have died. He died when he was like 23, 24. If you guys have noticed the eyeballs that I have up on the wall, that's where his eyes would be. It gives you an idea of how tall he is. So next time we get back to school, check it out. Once he got so old, he was like almost 500 pounds. He had to wear braces on his legs. The braces on his legs actually rubbed his legs raw. I think he got infected. The leg got infected, and he died of infection. And so this guy is just like huge, really, really, really tall. And so here's another picture of him. And at the day of his death, he was still growing. So in this picture, he was actually getting, that's not the Biebs. You could just see, look how big he is. Look at his hands. His hands are huge. I don't know how he got around. He couldn't fit in the car. But look at that. This lady's right at his belly button. And so if you look, right there's the pituitary gland. And so he had a tumor here pressing up against it to let it constantly go. And then it constantly sent out the hormone, and his body just kept growing. And the body received all the signals and responded. But it didn't stop until he passed away. And then I'm just going to show you adrenaline is one. That's a hormone. Okay, there's all the things that adrenaline can do for us. If you've ever been scared, you know you don't feel tired, you feel superhuman, you're really alert. So if somebody scares you, you kind of get a rush. This is that rush they're talking about. Caffeine does kind of the same thing, but not quite so rough. Okay, chemicals, hormones. Viagra is one of those. Nitroglycerin is one of those. So if you have heart issues, you need to send a signal to your heart. And we're going to stop there. Okay. I'm going to get this going. So we'll see you here in class shortly.